All right, welcome back to the Buying Sandlot podcast. I am Kyle Scott, founder of Buying Sandlot. On today's episode, I speak with Will Bartholomew. He's a former University of Tennessee fullback and the founder and CEO of D1 Training. D1 is a national network of coach-led, athletic-based training centers built to bring Division I standards to everyday athletes. They're attacking youth sports with age-based programs, certified coaches, and a holistic approach that D1 wants to build stronger, faster, and more confident athletes. They currently have 165 franchise locations across the US and are looking to add more. Before we get to the interview with Will, two quick things. Number one is we continue to plan our Buying Sandlot Youth Sports Business Conference for next spring, most likely April in Philly. Stay tuned to Buying Sandlot and our newsletters for details on that. Sometime mid to late October, we should have dates, venues, early bird tickets, sponsor opportunities. So keep an eye out for that. Second, I do want to mention that D1 is a sponsor of our Buying Sandlot newsletter, but given that they are one of the biggest players in the training space and the business Will has built over the last 20 years, I thought they would be an incredible guest to have on the podcast, not only for some of the franchise opportunities for the facility owners in our audience, but also about how youth athletes are training today versus how they used to train 10 and 20 years ago. So on to the interview with Will. All right, Will, welcome to the podcast.
Kyle, thanks for having me on, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Why don't you give our audience a little bit about your personal background from Tennessee to Denver and founding D1, and then we can kind of go into D1, the brand itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. I was a three-sport high school athlete, and I was fortunate enough to go to the University of Tennessee to play football. I was there to date myself, 97 to 01. Got to win a national championship, got to block for a guy named Peyton Manning, got to be captain of the team there. And then I was fortunate enough to go sign with the Denver Broncos. And in training camp, I blew out my knee. It was actually a non-contact drill. You know, you think of these like guys getting wrecked, and I was actually just running. And so
those are the worst kind. They always look like the worst kind. Yeah.
And had multiple knee surgeries trying to come back. And man, I wanted to dedicate my life to something that, really had a lot of meaning. And I had found a refuge. I talked to a lot of athletes about this. I found that the weight room for me was like sacred ground. It was like the place where I could go refine and lift and get better. And man, I love the weight room almost, way more than probably playing football. And so my dad had always told me, hey, if you find something you love, and you dedicate your life to it, you never work a day in your life. And so I came back to Nashville, Tennessee and opened up my first gym. And back in the day, when I was like, they were like, hey, who are you, who's the gym for? I was like, it's for the middle school, high school athlete. And people would look at me like I'm crazy, because they'd be like, who's going to sign up to do that? And man, I just had so much fun training these young athletes to come in, and you'd watch them just transform their bodies, transform their mindset, go out at a higher level. And parents just really gravitated towards it, to signing up their kids. And, fast forward, I started growing gyms around the country. I did corporate owned big box gyms, so 18,000 square feet. They were big turf fields, a lot of logistics, a lot of organization. And I made a big pivot in the business about 15 years in, and I franchised it. We simplified the model. We're now 4,000 square feet. So we went from an 18,000 square foot box to 4,000 square feet, just really honed in on going, hey, we want to be the private coach for these athletes. And today we have 165 locations open around the country. We're opening a bunch more locations and, really trying to serve all these communities in a world-class way. That's the quick abbreviated story.
No, that's good. I want to go back for a sec. So, lots of people own and operate facilities in our audience or entrepreneurs in some form or fashion, myself included. And I know the difficulties of starting a business. Go back, just briefly to that moment. Gym space is a tough business, right? Lots of failures, right? What was the challenge early on? Right. And then what made you feel like you were onto something that you can grow and scale? And then obviously it's probably not something that's on your mind on day one.
No, definitely not on day one. When I first started, it was, sometimes some great decisions are made when you just don't know all the factors. I was so young and naive. I was like, man, t-shirt, gym shorts, listen to rap music. Heck yeah. Who wouldn't want to be here?
When you know too much, sometimes you see the problems and then you just don't even try that road.
Man, when I first opened, I didn't understand pre-sales. I didn't understand pricing levers. I didn't understand coach compensation. I didn't understand CRMs and follow-up and how to customer service and all of these things that we have built today. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I think that actually kind of helped me because I just jumped in with a ton of energy and tried to use just common sense. Like, hey, what do I want? I want, when I walk in, to be greeted well. Great. Let's create a process around that. What do I want? I want like nutrition guidance. I want, my coach to talk to me more about not just strength and conditioning, but also like the psychology, like, hey, motivation and inspiration. So, man, it was a lot of just common sense. And then, throughout the years, I got a little smarter. I'm a fullback, so it takes me a little bit. I have to hit my head a few times before it goes off. And I just got around some really smart people, started hiring smart people. And that really helped me expand and grow. I got to give a credit to the team because I couldn't do it without a world-class team. And I feel fortunate enough. When I look back, as you asked that question, it's like, man, I think that really served me well of just going, you know what I don't know. Let's bring in experts and really listen. I've always been a collaborative leader. I don't like to be the guy who has all the answers. I was like, man, I don't have the answers. Like, how would you do this? And so I think that spirit has really helped me and served me well. And so, pick up little things along the way. And I think ultimately, if anybody's out there right now and you're in the business and you're scrapping and you're fighting and you're trying to figure out payroll, you're trying to figure out how do I get more members, lead gen, all these different aspects of the business. I think one of the most powerful things in my life that I've done is I've created a great network, and where I can lean on people and call on people and go, hey, how would you do this? So to me, it's like, don't reinvent the wheel. Go find out what other great people are doing and then just iterate. And so that's some lessons learned, hitting my head a few times.
Yeah, it's a good one. You want to go, what it's a saying, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together, something like that.
That's right.
So talk about, you said somewhere along the way, you kind of pivoted from just like, we want to train middle school and high school athletes, and you kind of refined the model. Talk about the product of D1, the service you guys offer to customers, where it is today versus then, and what's sort of that one line pitch you may give to a parent, a 16-year-old athlete, and then like a 42-year-old former athlete who wants to stay in shape like myself and, can never find enough time.
Man, all of us, right?
Yeah.
So
I didn't make it to the NFL like you did. But I say former athlete, I say high school, but it counts.
Yeah. I mean, look, we all get to whatever level we get to. But what I love about sport is that it teaches you so many different things in life. It teaches you how to take risks, how to bet on yourself, like you've done with this, that you've created, that, buying Sandlot, which is such a great idea, talking about youth sports and talking about what's going on. And you learn some of those things from, your coaches along the way. My pitch, I'll go to that question first. Like, at the end of the day, our why, like why we exist, is to inspire and motivate athletes to reach their goals. I had a coach when I was in high school. So back up a little bit of my story. When I was in 8th grade, I tore my ACL. So, and then fast forward, the same doctor that did my ACL surgery in 8th grade, he actually did it when I was with the Denver Broncos. It's kind of a surreal moment. So I tore my knee when I was in 8th grade, and they told me like, hey, you might get a shot to play high school ball. Like, much less go play, at Tennessee or have the chance to go to the NFL. And I'm, as an 8th grader, that's like devastating. You're like, what? And so my dad always taught me like, hey, if you go work really hard, you can give yourself the opportunities to be great, but you got to work really hard just to get the opportunity. So I had this work ethic in me, and I had a strength coach in high school. He was a volunteer strength coach, and we would lift together, and he would quote scripture in my ear. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another, And he would like preach these things in my ear. And all of a sudden I was watching my body transform. I was getting bigger and faster, stronger. And I was like, man, those incremental moments of lifting in high school just made me realize that, man, he inspired and motivated me to reach my goal. And my goal was to play at the highest level. And so that's what we want to do at D1. We want to create these gyms where you walk in and you see that brand. I got the branding going here. You see the D1 brand, and you go, man, I'm going to get inspired and motivated by this coach. Because there's a lot of coaching out there, as you know, that's tearing kids down, beating them up, telling them they can't do it. And to me, it's like, meet the athlete where they're at, inspire and motivate them to get a little bit better. And that might be just a couple more push-ups, right? That might be just to start or just to have the confidence to go out for the team. It doesn't have to be the 5-star athlete. But man, if you walk in the D1 doors and we're inspiring and motivating athletes, man, that's what it's all about. I used to think back in the day it was about the programming, and it was about, and don't get me wrong, we're hyper focused on programming. And I used to think about the coaching points. Don't get me wrong, the coaching points are super important. But like when you walk in today, man, it is a lot of inspiration. It's a lot of motivation. And so the psychology part of it is really important. Way more than just sets and reps. Mm-hmm. Because as we all know, we can go out in the backyard and do sets and reps. But if you can get inspired and motivated to go a little bit more, man, it can be a game changer. And so we purposely put, if you walk in any D1 franchise today, we have 12 words on the wall of every D1. Words like perseverance, respect, discipline, fearless. And to me, that's what it's all about. Like you're learning, you're getting bigger, faster, stronger. All of a sudden your bench press goes, from 185 to 200 and you're feeling great about yourself. But really what we're doing is we're building that character that's gonna last a lifetime. And that's what happened to me in the weight room. And that's what we're constantly focused on.
It almost sounds like, if you kind of take the business analogy there, you're almost describing compound growth, right? Like getting 1% better every day. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I'm in Philly. I went to Villanova, right? So I've seen, I listened to like Nick Sirianni speak now, right? I've listened and consumed everything Jay Wright said for 20 years. I wish he was still coaching, right? But and Bill Belichick, guys like that. There's always this like through line of like, their players sound like robots, because the next day it's like, we just want to get better tomorrow in practice. You hear the great teams, even after a big win, you always hear them say, we're just excited because we can get a little bit better tomorrow. And I don't think, especially at the youth sports level, I see it from other parents. Everyone just expects my kids are 9 and 7. So I see some parents who want their 9-year-old to make the leap to high school baseball player, to professional pitcher. And it's like, man, if he could just like figure out how to field a ground ball a little bit more efficiently tomorrow, like that's the next step on his ladder. So I think that's such an important message to have, in your facility. How do you tailor that message for the younger athletes, right? And then to have commercial success, you need adults in there who are training, who maybe don't have pro or college aspirations, but they want to stay in shape. They want to be their best self. Is that message differ, or is it really just the same across when somebody comes in, whether you're a kid or
I think it's the same underlying message. I think it's the delivery is different, right? Just like, man, if we want to get more explosive and powerful as a 47-year-old man, I'm not going to do the same exercise as my 17-year-old son's doing right now. So I think the delivery is a little different, but the underlying message is like, man, we got to train with intensity. We have to train with perseverance. We have to train with character. We have to follow a really good we do 8-week cycles. So we follow a periodization program. So we're constantly getting better and straining the system. And then, sometimes you have to dial it back depending on where you're at in the athlete journey, right? So I got 3 kids. And so this is kind of like my life, right? So my daughter just finished playing soccer at the University of Tennessee. So she had a whole Division I experience. And then my middle boy is a middle linebacker at Vanderbilt right now. And he's battling through just towards ACL in the spring game. So he's going through the mental rigors of going, hey, I put myself in position to get on the field. And now I have to go through this whole medical redshirt year and rehab and keep my head in the game. But yet, persevere and come back stronger than what I was. And then I have a 17-year-old, he's a quarterback in high school. And we're going through the journey of going, hey, listen, like I keep telling him, it's to me, it's about, to your point, it's the next game. It's playing great. The scholarships, the NIL, like all that will come, and it'll come in God's timing. Don't try to force this. This isn't like to me, that's the beauty of sport. It's like at the end of the day, whatever, walk of life you are, you could be the kid who has a dad in the sports performance business. You could be the kid who has nothing, who's just out in the park playing. And when you step on that field, everything gets leveled, right? The best players prevail. And so I love that, because that is just a great thing in life, because it's like, man, you got to go put in the work. And so when I look at like the business and where everything's going, it's like, man, we really want to teach these young athletes, like, hey, you got to put in the work. You got to come in and day out, just to get yourself the opportunity to play well. That doesn't mean you're going to do it all the time, because we all make mistakes.
What you guys talk about where you're seeing youth sports go? Before we got on, you kind of mentioned that like some of the things you're seeing today would have been unimaginable 20 years ago. What are the trends you're seeing, and how recent are they? Is this like since COVID? Is it in the last 10 years, 15 years? Give me big picture stuff you're seeing in youth sports, youth development.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to be, I founded the company in 2000. So you think about it, here we are 23 years later, man, I've seen some cycles here of where youth athletics has gone and youth sports. I think, there is such a great thing that's happening, in my opinion, which is there's a hyper focus on having an unbelievable youth sports experience to, one, set you up in life. And it might not set you up for that full ride scholarships. Now, some kids are going to have that, right? They're going to get that full scholarship. And then because they get the full scholarship, they get the opportunity to play at a pro level, or they don't, and it gets them in the door for a job. But what I love about what's happened throughout the cycles is like, man, I think there's been a really big emphasis on kids and having, I'm going to call it enjoyment at the youth level. I think when I first got going, it was like, man, a lot of kids would get burned out by coaches, really. And I think throughout the years that has gotten better. Now, what's also increased though is how much time people are spending on it. And there's a competitiveness to it. And I personally love that, because, there's competitive teams out there, whether you're at soccer or whatever. You just have to always, Archie Manning gave me the kind of the best advice. I was like, hey, my youngest is a quarterback, you raise these amazing men and quarterbacks. Like, what advice would you give me? He's like, Will, man, when you are in the stands as a parent, or you're watching them and you want the win, or you want him to do well more than he wants to do well, you're in the wrong. He's like, you always want him to be the one who wants to go work and go practice more and do things. And I think that's just such good wisdom. The unhealthiness side of youth sports is like, man, you're trying to live through your kid. And so what you want to do is, man, just fan that flame, put your kid in great opportunities, and let them learn lessons that's going to serve them the rest of their life. Because when I talk about inspiring and motivating people to their goals, sometimes their goal is like, man, just building that character, that character value of going like, man, I'm going to go work at something really hard, and it's going to take a while to become great. And I think that's what business is. I think that's what marriage is. I think that's what life is like, man, you got to work really, really hard a lot, to become great. And so, and I just think what's happened now too in youth sports throughout the years is like, I'm seeing more and more where just I'm going to call it the born with gifted talent, like the DNA side, like that you still have to work. You can't just be born super talented and not work, because you will fizzle out pretty quick,
You need that. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, because kids are working really hard these days. way more than, 20 years ago.
Yeah. You need that, anybody, any walk of life, you need that inner desire. If somebody else wants it for you, then that almost, sometimes I feel like that suppresses it. You see it. I've seen it in parents, like just it's coming out and then it's taking the enjoyment out for the kid. And you're like, this dude's going to burn out at 13. They're not going to be able to do this.
Well, and that's why I love what you're doing. And I mean this in, there's a lot of resources now for parents that are out there going, hey, this is how I raised my kid, or this is how we're viewing it. A lot of great athletes are coming out going, hey, my dad pushed me here, or my mom, or whatever it might be. And I think it's because we're talking about it, like, man, it's getting healthier and it's getting better and better. And so these kids are getting, really excited to go out and compete. And I think competition is so good. So I love it, because I just think, when we sit back and we look back on our lives, it's like, man, you look back on the things that you worked really hard for, whether you won or lost, right? You're like, man, I worked really hard for that. And that was really enjoyable.
Probably not anybody in the world to get better quarterback parental coaching advice than a Manning.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
One of the topics there, and kind of last one on this thread, but like lots been made of specialization and the need to create well-rounded athletes. Guys like LeBron James and Bryce Harper, two of the most famous sort of high school aged athletes over the last couple of decades. And they've talked about like, hey, like we played other sports, like we were known for this, but we were able to do other things. How do you guys balance? How does D1 balance elite athlete training for a single sport versus overall fitness? I know you mentioned it earlier, and there's a lot on your website about holistic well-being. We already talked about the mental health aspect, but talk a little bit about balancing, like getting better to be a D1 quarterback, but also like, overuse injuries, things like that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of multi-sport. I was a 3-sport athlete. My son, who's a quarterback, he plays 2 sports. He plays football and basketball. I'm a big fan of multi-sport. When it comes to training in multi-sport, it's really, I do believe that every athlete needs a season to train. And it might be just you have June, right? And we're going to get bigger, faster, stronger because you're doing so many different sports. It might be, my son, he trains in season. And some people might think like, hey, maybe that's too much. I would tell you, like, for me, it's like, man, his training's completely different. He's working on fast switch muscles. He's working on flexibility. And, if you look at any great athlete, you have to train year round. Now, there are certain seasons when you're like, hey, this is a bulking season, right? I got to put on some muscle, or I got to get really fast in this season. So, what we really encourage our athletes to do that come to D1 is like, hey, let's mark out the calendar. Let's understand what you're into, what you're not. And so, hey, when you're in season, you're in football season, you're going to come to D1 twice a week. And here's what we're going to work on. When you're off season, we're going to come 4 times a week, and we're going to do a structured program. And so we really want to encourage athletes to play as many sports as they can, because I do believe it helps, to your point about being well-rounded, especially in, middle school, high school ages. And then at some point they are going to have to specialize, right? My son's getting to that point. Like he's a junior in high school right now. And we were just talking about that. This is probably his last basketball season. He might play his senior year, but if he goes to college to play quarterback, he's going to be training for that. It goes by really fast for any parents that are out there listening, and your kids, 10, 11, 12, I will tell you, it goes so fast, like really soak it up.
I always hear that.
Really soak it up and enjoy it. And then, I just love what the weight room teaches these athletes of like, hey, I can get bigger, faster, stronger. I need to work. It's not about just playing. It's about the work that goes into playing. So if you think about the business, I'll use this podcast as an example. There's preparation that goes into this. You had to look it up. You got to find the person. You got to do it. And to me, that's what the weight room is. It is extra preparation to go out and play, right? You have practice, but then you have you got to take care of your own mental body as well. And so, I'm a big believer in that every athlete should have a coach, everyone, not just a sport coach, but actually a physical coach, a coach that can, a strength and conditioning coach that can get you mentally fired up, can inspire you and motivate you. Because at the end of the day, when sports are all done, as we all know they're going to be, you want to look back and go, man, I did everything I could to put myself in the position to be the best I can be.
Yeah, and it's a good segue there because it's also what you're talking about capitalizes on this trend over the last 5, 10 years, like this general health and wellness trend, like physical health and wellness, right?
Yeah.
And I think you said earlier it was around 2015 where you decided like, hey, we're going to go the franchise route. So let's make
Yeah.
a hard pivot to the business side of the
Yeah.
business now, right?
Sure.
Talk about that moment, like when you're like, okay, we have these owned and operated facilities, and now we're going to go franchise. What's the why, right? And then how do you need to kind of reconfigure the business for something that is repeatable and scalable? Start there, and then we can kind of like pull on that thread.
Yeah. So in 2015, I had 32 corporate gyms. And when I looked around and looked at those locations, when the general manager almost became the owner of that community, like they acted like the owner, I would go in the market and they'd be like, oh, yeah, Brian's the D1 guy. You go to the high school football games or the basketball games, they'd be like, that's the D1 guy. And the light bulb went off that, man, the business really needs to be around the franchisee being the D1 guy in that community. So that really, and when you start looking at franchising in general, you start going as service-based business, which we're serving people. We're coaching is the act of service. Like you have a localized ownership and attention, man, the business just does a lot better. They care about things. They invest in the community. They know it better. And so that started bending my mindset towards franchising. And then when you got under the hood, you go, man, we have so many athletes in small town USA that were like calling us and going, hey, how can I get your programming? What did you do for Tim Tebow? What did you do for, all these star athletes that, Chris Paul, these guys you guys are training? Like, what are you doing? And so we would send them programming. We're just helping helping athletes out around the country. We're like, man, small town USA needs a D1 for these athletes to go get great coaching. But the economic model was like, man, we need to tighten up the square footage to get exactly what we need. So that's how we reduced it down to our 4,000 square foot model, 6 racks, 20 yards of turf. You walk in and it's like, man, this is what a D1 university looks like. And then we go, man, we really want world-class coaches. At the end of the day, they're our product. Our coaches are why people come to D1. So if you're out there right now and you're listening, you go, what makes D1 special? I will tell you, it's the coaches. And so we spend a ton of time on educating our coaches on how to inspire and motivate athletes to reach their goals. And we talk about that nonstop. It's like, how do we inspire and motivate? So, and that's a balance. That's a delicate balance, right? Because we want someone, I always say, our strength coaches, we want them like really smart, like book smart, but with a WWE personality, right? Because you want to go in there, you want to be like inspired and motivated. Be like, yeah, I want to be around this guy, but yet they know what to do and they know how to teach it and they have the discipline to show up day in, day out with that athlete and help them get better. And so, man, all of that kind of packaged up, we put it together. We put all the processes behind it. Obviously, we had been in the business at that time, 16 plus years, and we repackaged it to teach this to a franchise owner and go, hey, this is how you become the D1 owner in your community and impact your community. And so we're really proud of our franchise owners. I mean, our franchise owners, I will tell you, you talk about a world-class people. They're servant mindset. They have the great attitude. They know what right looks like, and they're following what we call the Playbook, which is our processes. And man, they're hiring great coaches and impacting their communities. Because we are, if you peel back everything, you go like, why are you here? We're here to serve athletes. And that athlete mindset, man, I just love. I get super excited about it.
I could tell. I mentioned a couple of times we have a lot of facilities folks in our audience. We surveyed them a couple of months ago, and we were able to sort of pull out some of their pain points, right? A lot of them came to infrastructure, but a lot were about like just efficient utilization of the space, what to do during downtimes of the day when, kids are in school and they have this space. How do you guys think about that? You said you took these larger square foot facilities, shrunk it down into something that's, more repeatable. Seems like you've perfected that. How do you guys think about that efficiency, right? And how do you think about just like maximizing the space, especially during downtime?
Yeah. So efficiency, one, let's talk about when it's busy. We use a thing called a profit margin calculator where we look at the number of athletes that are training. We look at our profit margin on that. And the way you look at the way we calculate a profit margin is basically the revenue we're taking in. We like our compensation to be around 30%. So 30% of whatever we're bringing in, that's going to the coach to coach it out. And so when you start looking at it from a profit margin standpoint, you start understanding like how much money you're actually making per member that signs up, per personal training, per group session, that type of thing. So the profit margin is really important of when it's busy. I think that is like the number one thing. The other thing is it doesn't take a lot of hours, depending on, if you got facilities out there that are larger, and this is why we shrunk it, because it doesn't take a lot of hours to make great money in this space. When I say when you're actually like running the business. So think of it like if you compare it to a restaurant, if you were only open for dinner, can you make money when you're just open for dinner? Now, as we all know, all the admin stuff, the sales, everything else is happening during those other, what you're calling downtime. And so to me, that's not downtime. That's time when it's time like, hey, I need to get in the office. I need to do my sales calls. I need to follow up with people. I need to deliver great content to my athletes so they stay, right? And make sure I'm communicating well with them. That is actually, it's a really important time. Almost more important than when the athlete is in there. They got to have both of them. But like when we look at facilities, we want to make sure you're maximizing what you're calling downtime. We want to maximize that time. And there's some really great industry stats out there. So if you guys are in the facilities right now and you want to know, like, you can research some just amazing stats. The health and fitness space, it takes 7 reach outs to get an athlete to, we call them athletes or member, whoever, to come in the door. Like people think like, oh, I called the person back. They reached out to me and I called them back once. Like we're not really working the business, right? So it takes 7 reach outs to get one person to come in the door. When they come in the door, you got to have a scripted experience. It's got to be a great experience. And then when they leave, you got to have great follow-up, And so just like our athletes come in and put in a lot of work, I tell our coaches, you got to put in a lot of work to keep athletes.
I think that's one of the big things that lots of individual mom and pop, smaller scale owners really don't think about is like the process behind the product. And listen, I'm in media. It's kind of the same thing, right? Like, I've been in media 15 plus years and I've always ran the business, but our product is the content we put out, this podcast, the written podcast, the newsletter. And in some ways you gave the restaurant example. I always considered it like a baker, right? Like we're getting up every day and we got to bake the cake. Our cake is the content. And then at some point you got to spend some time growing the business side of it, right?
That's right.
And from just what I'm seeing, again, I'm relatively newish to the youth sports space and the kind of sports training space, but of the people I've talked to, you see the passion about the sport and about the training. And oftentimes, not always, but not as much thought like you guys have about the process and how you kind of maintain the business side of it. Talk about what D1 offers to franchisees, right? Why you can, I don't want to say take a little bit of that load off, but give them that playbook to be successful. And like, hey, we know this works. If you follow the script, as you said, like you're set up for success here.
Yeah, look, we built the business around what I wish I had when I first started. I laugh at it because like I didn't know, like we were talked about earlier, I didn't know what I didn't know. And throughout the years, man, I've gotten a lot of scars, bumps and bruises, made a bunch of mistakes. I remember being the guy who was like, man, I should be making $10,000 a month on smoothies, right? And so I started mixing smoothies. And then all of a sudden I'm like looking at my profit margin. I'm like, why am I losing money? Well, I started figuring out my coaches are eating all the smoothies during break, you know what I mean? And I didn't have the processes in place. So what a franchise does is it really cuts the learning curve for these owners, because if an owner goes and they open XYG gym, which the barrier to entry in the fitness space is low. That's why I think you see a lot of people failing. And then, when you can basically skip the line by being a part of a franchise system and learn all of these bumps and bruises that I had to go through in my 20s and 30s. And I'm fortunate enough, what I love about where we're at is I was fortunate enough to not franchise for 16 years. I think a lot of businesses, they get into it, they have one location that's successful and they're like, they haven't been through the scars and bumps and bruises and they franchise it. Now you're trying to teach it to a new owner when you haven't really scaled it. You've just run one or two. And so we were fortunate enough to be 16 years in, and don't get me wrong, we don't have everything perfect. But when you come into the D1 franchise system, you're not just going to be a part of a world-class brand. You're not just going to be a part of industry of fitness, a segment right now with this youth enrichment, youth fitness category that's booming. You're going to have a playbook and you're going to have a checklist to everything. You're going to have all the best practices from our locations and all the learnings. And then you're going to be able to compare yourself to locations all around the country in different markets and segments. And that is what the beauty of franchising is. It is like being a part of a world-class team. And so to me, that's where we've really tried to set ourselves apart. We're super picky on who our franchise owners are. We constantly, when people apply, we do a lot of steps to make sure they're the right partner. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure we pick great people that are going to live the vision out and the mission out in their communities and be able to follow that playbook. The last piece of this, if you're out there and you're like, where do I start? Maybe if you're running a business, I would tell you like an adage that I really like is, win in the draft. If you win in the draft, if you draft Tom Brady, it's a lot easier to have a championship football team. And when you're picking a business to be a part of, win in the draft, pick the right people that you want to be doing business with. Because at the end of the day, there are definitely ebbs and flows of fitness. Like things have come in and out. There's certain ways to get more people to train. There's certain, there's all these things that have happened throughout, the course of even, a 20 plus year career. Like I've watched fads, I've watched all the things happen, and for me, what has been a constant is great people win. People that work really hard, that keep showing up, people that are committed to the cause, that are on the mission, that have a great value system, like that wins. And so if you're out there and you're like, where do I start? I would tell you like, man, be hypercritical of your current team, elevate them, right? Elevate your current team and then add, when you, once again, win in the draft, go get people that have done it and done it really well. That helps speed things up.
So that one of the questions I had here is for you guys in your experience, what type of person for you guys succeeds or maybe struggles a little bit? Like, is there a mindset or something you could see early on? They're like, this person's gonna win for us. This person, it's not the right type.
Yeah. So, we have all different types of winners within the D1 ecosystem from franchise owners. I think one of the common traits that we see is someone who can embrace their community. I would say sales, but like I've had people that aren't really like sales oriented, but they just love their community. When you can network in your community, and people do it in different forms or fashion, like, hey, we might sponsor the youth sports league. I was just on with an owner before this call, and we were walking through, they were getting involved in their youth sports organization in their market. And to me, if you can network in your community, and the community wants to be a part of what you're doing, man, that's what this business is all about. Because you're gonna, like for us, you hire a general manager and you hire coaches, and we have recruiters that help run kind of the front admin. And so you're gonna have a team that runs the business, but the X factor is like, man, if that owner embraces the community, and people love it. People love it.
So much discussion in the youth sports space about tapping into sponsorship dollars at scale. And as you're talking there, I'm like, man, you guys make a great sponsor for youth clubs. Like you're almost the perfect sort of business to sponsor.
Yeah. And for
at
us,
scale, by the way.
For us, I will tell you, like anybody out there with it, people might be listening to this that have youth sports organizations, reach out to us. Because for us, at the end of the day, what we want to do, and we do this all across the country, we do free assessments. It's basically free testing. So like, hey, bring your athlete into D1. We'll test them. We do a 10-yard dash, a vertical. We have body fat if they want to do that. Broad jump, depending on their age, a bench press or squat. And when we test them, what happens is all of a sudden it's like the athlete knows where they're at or the parent knows where they're at. And so it's like, then we can talk about training. And so for us, I think if I were running a youth sports organization, I would want all my athletes tested because I want to know where they're at. And then it's like, okay, the ultimate goal is not just to run a good practice or a good club or a good organization. The ultimate goal is to get these athletes better. And so you got to know where they're at. And I will tell you, I've watched kids that have come in and have tested, and they're on the C level club soccer team, and they've tested and then they've trained, and all of a sudden they're on the A level team. And to me, that's what a club's job is to make these athletes better, not just organize the competition.
As a quick aside, I have another one on the franchise aspect, but as a quick aside there, how important do you think standardized metrics, right? And for education, we have the SATs, right? We have FICO scores as adults, right? How important, especially with the money flowing into college and players are now getting paid, obviously. It's hard for a lot of times. I think it's hard for universities or to really get more than qualitative analysis of a player. Talk about the importance of standardized scores. How are you guys thinking about that? You kind of touched on it there, but I want to expand on it.
It's really important. I think it's really important. And, the scores, just like an SAT score, look, I didn't have a great SAT score, but I've got common sense. And so, I think that's helped me in business a little bit more than testing well. But I do think that testing gives you a level of confidence in the athlete to be able to compete at that certain level, because if you're not, and I think for a parent, you kind of want to know where your kid is, right? You want to know, like, hey, are they fast enough to be able to play at that level? Are they big enough, strong enough, those types of things. And so I think testing is extremely valuable. We have an app where we log all our testing and are able to give that feedback to the parents. And then obviously you definitely want to test multiple times, because you're always going to do better, because if you just do it multiple times, you're going to get better. But then if you have to add training to it, you can get exponentially better. And so I think it's really important. I think where we're seeing things go, and I'll give you a little clue into the long-term vision of D1. I am a really big believer in habits. You talked about it earlier, of showing up day in, day out, daily 1% better. And to me, those are habits. Like, we want to create great habits: drinking water, getting our sleep, doing some mental work. Like, I would rather have an athlete, do 10 push-ups a day, for the entire year than do one day of, 3,000 push-ups, right? I'd rather have every day just keep getting a little bit better. And so where we're seeing D1 serve a role in these athletes is building those habits and being able to give them the information and going, hey, if I click in the app, this is where we're going. If I click in the app and I want to be the best soccer player, I click on it. We have all the data of all these soccer players that have trained throughout the years and how they become great. It's like, okay, here's the checklist. Here's my habit list if I want to become great at this. And much like if you want to become an engineer and you go to college, you have a checklist of courses that you need to go take, and you need to get certain grades on those to become an engineer. To me, that's the way I would love to see athletics, because don't get me wrong, I do believe my meathead DNA that my dad and grandfather and all them, I love that they gave me that I was going to, my whole family is kind of this naturally thicker build body, right? I had to work really hard, and I just want, just tell me what to do and I'll do it every day. And so to me, that's what I want to be able to give athletes. That's what I see the future of D1 being, is like, man, if I want to become the greatest lacrosse player, what do I need to do? It's like, here's the checklist. Do it every day. And here's also the training program, because I think that's what coaching is like being able to give the information to the athlete so the athlete can do it. And that's serving them really well. And then it's to inspire and motivate them even when they're down to go do it. Right. Because some days, as you know, in business, you don't feel great.
Sometimes you just got to show up. You show up, and you may not. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you just move it forward a little bit. Maybe some days it goes further than other days. Yeah,
that's right.
Last one on the franchise piece. If someone wants to own a D1 franchise, what does that process look like from their standpoint?
Yeah, please click on d1franchise.com, d1franchise.com, or d1training.com. We also have a link there, d1training.com. And submit your info. Our process looks like this. When you submit, one of our team members calls you immediately. We do an introduction call, give you the high level information, understand where you're looking to see if that territory is available. And then we have a series of phone calls. So our process is a 2-month process. We have a series of phone calls where you meet with current owners, leadership. We walk you through kind of every aspect of the business. And then if you go through that, we invite you to what we call a recruiting day. Similar to the D1 experience, you become a recruit and you come to our headquarters. I personally meet with every franchise owner and we want to know their why. Like, why are you doing this? And that type of thing. Much like, an athlete who walks in the door, I want to help everyone. Fortunately, we only have a certain amount of territories and a certain amount of communities that we're going to be putting D1s in. And so we want world-class people. So if you're out there and you're listening, man, we'd love to talk to you. And then I'm a big believer in sharing. So people try to hide these secrets. I'd rather just let everybody, this is what we do. This is how we do it. We're just wide open like that. So if you're out there and you're in a competitive business, we'd love to talk to you. If you're out there and you're in a gym business, you're trying to, maybe I hit something like you want to talk about, like a profit lever, just reach out. We'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Big picture stuff. What are some trends you're seeing? I know women's sports, super hot right now, tech and data in every area, but in sports, what do you guys think about the future beyond just, you kind of alluded to the habits? What else are you guys looking to in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think the trend is going towards, we all need coaches. We all need coaches, whether it's in business, whether it's, your physical fitness, whether it's in sport. We all need coaches to help us realize our goals and dreams. You talked about it earlier about, it is really hard to go far alone. And in this day and age where we're seeing a lot of isolation because of phones and all the social media stuff and everything, it is so important to have an in-person coach because you can feel that energy. You can get excited. It can help motivate you to go beyond what you're capable of. And so what we're seeing is a massive trend towards private coaching and people really, having a customized program to help them reach their goal. We're really leaning into that, especially in the youth space. I will tell you, it's funny. It's like, I'm sitting here, I got 2 Division I athletes and then I got one about to be, and they listen to their D1 coach almost more than me. And it's, I always said it, it's like, man, I got more. I was talking about that strength coach earlier, and my dad played Division I football, and but you want your dad to be your dad, and so it's like, man, when you get a coach out there who can really inspire, motivate, and really help create a path for your athlete, man, I just see that's where it's all going. More and more athletes are coming in going, this is what I want. This is who I want to do it with. Or, hey, can you tell me who can help me do this? Right? That type of thing. And so private coaching is up and to the right in a big way.
That's a really good spot to leave it. When I tell our audience again, Will, where they can find out more about franchise opportunities and D1 in general.
D1training.com, D1training.com. Check us out. Love to talk to you. And just, man, I got to tell you, Kyle, I love what you're doing in the space. Really appreciate you leaning into youth athletics and helping business owners as well. That's a real passion of mine, is helping business owners win.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Will. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.